Hi, it's Odeean here. Today I've gone and finished off my Warbotron set. So previously I had Swindle and Brawl and Blast Off. Well, that's their cartoon names, not their third-party names. Now I've finally gone and got the last two, which is Fierce Attack, aka Onslaught, and Whirlwind, who was Vortex. So this is not going to be a transforming review. I don't plan to transform every figure here, but I just like to show them combined, show them individually, and give a few thoughts. The very first thing that comes to mind as soon as I got this guy combined is he is huge. It's just really probably the biggest combiner I've got. So if I grab my ruler here, in inches, looks about 15 inches to the top of the head. So what's that, 38 centimeters maybe? That's quite big. If you take it all the way up to maybe the top of the shoulders, then it's more like 17 inches, which is 43, 44 centimeters. So it's a really, really huge figure. Importantly, the next thing that really jumps out at me once I've got all these robots combined is that this really looks like Bruticus. Over the last few years, I've picked up, quite a few combiners. Some of them successful, others not, but all in all, most of them not really looking like a G1 version of the character they're supposed to be. I don't think that's the case with this guy. With Warbotron, he looks like Bruticus. Now, definitely stylized, but all the key shapes are there. The colors, just the placement. Like going down, you can still see the different vehicles. I mean, things like Blast Off. I think in general, Blast Off is a little bit weak. He's the weakest of the bunch, and he lets the combined mode down a bit as well, but it does definitely scream Bruticus. The posability on the combined mode is pretty awesome. We have some ratchets inside the connector pegs here, which have little detents, but it can be a bit hard for you to hear that on the camera because of the squeaking of the plastic, but there's definitely clicks in there, which give the ability to hold the arms straight out like that. Now the elbows do just use friction. On Whirlwind over here, there's this, you can hear this clickiness, but on Blast Off, I can't remember his Warbotron name, he doesn't seem to have any of those clicks, so you just get this flopping. Now, I did get this extra body for him, which I haven't opened out of the bag yet, and I'm thinking, oh, listen to that. I've just figured out what that's for. I did, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why this is here. There's actually a replacement body, which is going to give hip clicks so that the elbow will be able to hold up that gun. That's pretty good, because as it is now, the elbow definitely cannot hold up that gun. You can just see it flops down like that. But, problem solved. We've got a pretty cool waist, so he can rotate his waist as much as you'd like, and the figure can still hold up. It can still hold its own weight, which is a huge benefit compared to some things, and I'm definitely thinking of Hercules there falling over all over the place. Clicky hips, clicky knees. That's a pretty good click, although it is more than likely to bend the transformation joints in here than it is to bend the actual knee ratchet, just due to the scale and strength of that joint. So basically a very, very solid figure, especially for something which is so big. I mean, I wouldn't expect much more from a figure that wasn't a combiner, to be honest, with the amount of clicks and ratchets he's got. I'm just going to disconnect the camera for a little bit. And I mean, it's too big, I can't pull back, that's why I have to do this. But if I go down here onto the feet, you can see that he's got these huge feet, which are separate parts in the true G1 combiner style, where they just click on separately. But they have got some heavy-duty ratchets inside. Listen to that. That's a big click, and that is part of the secret why he can hold these splayed leg poses, because the feet are so long going backwards, and they are actually very adequately ratcheted, which is pretty awesome. Now, onto the hand. His hand is kind of in the style of Hercules and TFC's different kinds of hands, individually jointed in all the knuckles there. And it's a little bit stiff in some of these. I can't actually get that one to bend, but I'm sure if I just put the camera down, I could do it. Here's Warbotron with Hercules. So there's a couple of add-ons on that Hercules, but you get the idea. Hercules has been my favourite combiner for a long time, but finally I think the age is starting to show on this guy. And where I notice it the most is in the hip region here. So it's just a little bit too narrow, and the posability has always been really shit on him. He just sort of falls over because he's not strong enough in his ratchets. But it was passable. Putting him in comparison to Warbotron's Bruticus, this is a whole new level of quality because the joints can actually hold the weight of the figure without leaning it on something, which is a big plus compared to this guy. So I know in some other combiners we've had some good posability. We've got MMC's Feral Rex. That's an awesome toy. Not really a very G1. It's got a lot of liberties taken, but I do like that toy quite a lot. But I don't know. I'm not saying this is better than that, but I'm saying it's more useful in my collection just because it has that more G1 look, which is heavily the way that I'm leaning to these days. Here's a comparison with Masterpiece Grimlock, who's quite a big figure, but definitely at maximum comes up to the midway on this combiner. So that's pretty good. I like that scale. I'm not sure if Grimlock is meant to be that big compared to Bruticus, but you know, there's plenty of Grimlocks to choose from if you're unhappy with that scale. And he is still nothing compared to gigantic series Burning Godzilla. Look at that. Godzilla just looks down on him. What a fool. I'll just give a once around to show the front and back, and then I think we'll get into the individual robots. And there's a lot of details all over this thing, but none of it looks extreme. Like, it doesn't look like overkill. It's scaled pretty well to the figure. I think they've done it just right. They've picked out quite a lot of areas that are important with little bits of paint or other coloured plastic. So I'm pretty happy with the way it looks just in general. I mean, it doesn't look masterpiece. I wouldn't call this a masterpiece by any means of the imagination. That's probably due to the realism of the vehicles. I mean, they look good, but they don't look like actual vehicles, especially Space Shuttle and Helicopter. They don't really look like anything that exists to my knowledge, but it is very detailed nonetheless, and it fits perfectly with a third-party or classics collection, and for me, that's really what it is. Earlier on in another review, I mentioned that Swindle here was really my favourite figure in the whole set. Now that I've got all five, I can say that Swindle, he is still my favourite, and this is what sold me initially on getting these. I did not jump on board with their version of Blastoff. I felt that this is not really representative of the cartoon. It's a good take. The head, it salvages it a little. I mean, I like these block heads. It's very G1. I had Bruticus as a kid. I've more recently sold it, but it just nostalgically does something for me to see those blocks. But I just didn't feel happy with the liberties they'd taken making these parts so squared off. In my opinion, Blastoff is much better as a more rounded figure. Now, the Fence Project version, it was more rounded, but it was just too small, so I've subsequently got rid of that one as well. But for now, this is probably the best that we're likely to get. So, you know, he's all right. Swindle is awesome. Their version of Brawl is pretty good. It's got really good posability. I mean, that's much better posability than we ever got on a G1 toy. It looks like 90% of the way to being what Brawl should be. But, you know, the thing that is a little weak is the narrowness of the shoulders. This is well understood. Many people have commented on that before. I'm not saying anything new, but it's true nonetheless that those shoulders for a tank robot do look a little bit thin. Now, if you had the G1 toy, he would have been just up and down like that. So I guess there's really not that much to complain about. He's got pretty good light piping, as do all of these figures, if you can see them shining through there. And I like the fact that you can leave the backpack on. Now, I know this backpack comes off and can form other weapons. I choose to leave it on. I like my transformations to just be one continuous piece. I don't like parts forming at all. And I do appreciate, even on the blast off figure, where these backs of the calves on his legs, they can come off and form guns. I also choose to leave them on just because I don't like to think of the parts forming. I like them to just stay in one block. When it comes to the two newest figures that I got, I think that Vortex by far is the worst figure. I'm not saying that it's a bad toy. I do think it's a good toy. I like many of the features of this toy, but I think he strays the furthest out of all of these figures from what I wanted to see just in cartoon likeness. So he's not really recognizable as Vortex. If you didn't know he was Vortex before you bought it, you probably wouldn't guess it. And I also think that his detachable front part of the helicopter here is by far the worst parts forming, because it really needs to come off to transform, unlike all the others who can stay on. So I'm a bit disappointed with this. I just don't think it looks right. My disappointment with these two kind of leaves the door open to somebody else doing a bigger and better and more accurate Bruticus, but I'm not complaining. As a whole, the team is very contained. They look like they belong together, so the weaknesses of the individual kind of get smoothed over. Their take on Onslaught, on the other hand, I'm pretty happy with. I had Onslaught for the longest time. He was one of my early toys, and I think this does really a lot of justice to how that G1 toy looked. It also matches pretty decently with the cartoon, but for my eye, it meshes with my toy memories of being a kid, so I'm happy with that. Some issues that I've got with it are floppiness. So you can see there he's not really holding his gun. If I hold his gun up, he can't take that weight. Admittedly, it's a very big gun, but it doesn't really fit. Like if you look there, it's at a weird angle because it just collides with itself. That's not the only option. We do have another handle in here, so I do realize it can plug on in a different way, like this, which is sitting a little bit more flush. It still doesn't hold the weight. The reason I chose to put it the way that I had it was that's how it's drawn in the instruction diagram, and I think it looks better that way. I just think that it's not a good idea to use these huge guns, and probably just use any one of the other figures' smaller guns with Onslaught and it will be fine. I wonder if Sly Strike's gun can fit. No, so, I mean, it's a pity this gun isn't going to fit there. So not all the weapons can even fit into his hand, which is a little bit weird. I mean, you would think 5mm peg's a 5mm peg, but maybe not. Maybe these not so simple. Okay, well, that's definitely not going to go in there. Now, I like the head. Those nice, crisp, bright eyes really do shine right through. But although I do like it, it is like super floppy. Look at that. It doesn't want to hold its position. And I mean, that's easy enough to fix. I'm guessing I could tighten the screw in the back, or maybe pop some blue tack in there or any other sticky substance. But just out of the box, this is a floppy mess. Originally, when I transformed this guy to robot mode, I was thinking there's no articulation on these shoulders. You can't lift them out. But then I realized these wheels are on a ball and socket. And if you just, like, there's this thing here which blocks it, which is part of the mud flap or wheel guard. If you bend this flat, obviously it's intended to do that. It gives clearance. So the arm itself, even not the whole shoulder, but just the arm itself, can extend out into that direction, which is a little bit of compensation, but it does look a little bit wrong. But the posability is there. I mean, it's double jointed at the elbow, and although it has that double jointedness, it still only reaches about 90 degrees. All in all, I'm happy. So the majority of this set, these three guys, very happy. These two guys, not so much. The posability is average. So all of them tend to have approximately this much posability, and it's kind of that TFC level. I'm not saying these are TFC, but they're in the same vein of blocky robots that can kind of pose, but then again, only to a certain extent. Now, where these depart from TFC is Warbotron are much, much closer to the source material than TFC ever were. So definitely not the same. And the plastic, there's there's nothing bad to say about this. Plastic quality is very good. The tolerances are pretty good. There's like no flash. I haven't been able to see flash hanging off the figure, so it's a good quality figure. Now, there's a lot of accessories. Like any G1 combiner, you get a pile of crap to attach on. But these pieces are, like, they're pretty nice. This is not just a blank piece of plastic with no detail on it. There's actually see-through plastic behind some of these panels, like different colors, independently moving parts. Like these tracks are painted in 2 different colors. It's kind of, these accessories are kind of quality stuff. We get this huge gun, that's impressive. I'm guessing this is belonging to Bruticus, but it also has the ability to move and transform, so you can mount it in different ways. All 5 vehicle modes are pretty solid. We have Blast Off here. He is a futuristic space shuttle. I mean, you can hear how he's fit together pretty securely. Everything tabs in place. Although I'm not a fan of this style of wing. You can see it just pops off. Now, a lot of toys do this. The iGear Seekers do this. It's a very common thing in Transformers and third-party Transformers. But I think that over time that just gets loose, and I don't like the whole idea of that. It's a simple way to connect the wing that doesn't involve screws and pins, and they can easily mold it. I think that's why companies go with it, but I wish there was an alternative. On the other side, I don't think you can see it. There's actually stress marks starting to form here, so I don't transform those wings too often, but it does look good. I like the use of clear plastic on the cockpit there, and I like this great big nose cone. That's pretty cool looking as well. My favourite Swindle here forms an awesome Hummer. Now, I think that's what it is. I'm not a car expert, but this is the best version of Swindle. I mean, I like my animated. He's got animated styling, so he doesn't fit with much else. My animated is one of my favourites. This is my other favourite. I don't think I really need any other Swindle now that I've got this. This is just pretty much perfect. He doesn't roll so good on hard surfaces just because of plastic wheels on hard surfaces, but the wheels do turn really good, and he's got enough clearance. So if you put it on some other floor, I'm sure it will work fine. His weapon can flip the handle up like that and just form a peg, standard 5mm, to peg onto the back. I like this pink plastic. I know other people don't like it. I think that's cool. I'm just very, very pleased with that. It doesn't have any see-through windows, but I think that's because there's nothing to see on there. If you could see in there, it would just look like a mess. So in this instance, having a good paint job over the windows, I think, is an advantage. Brawl is a really good tank. I loved Brawl as a kid. He was just one of my go-to guys when I was doing battle scenes or setting up defensive positions. I would always have Brawl because he just looked like an awesome tank. And this looks just like Brawl, so very happy with that. There's no rolling wheels under here. There's actually a little bit of clearance issue where the tracks don't even touch. Maybe I've got it transformed a little bit off, but I don't care. I'm happy for it to just sit still like that and look awesome. Now his weapons are keyed. You can see there. In robot mode, they fit only one particular hand, but in vehicle mode, it can plug into either side. I don't know why they're keyed like that, actually. It's a bit of a mystery to me. You can pop them off, just plug them into the front if you like. It doesn't really matter where you put them, or you can just leave them off altogether. Now, this can rotate. As you rotate the turret, it has to be raised a little, but that's no big deal because it is just on a 5mm peg, so it can go up. Now, I had a QC issue with mine. This panel in here, which holds the whole thing together, this black piece, it had actually been pinned on upside down. So initially I couldn't transform this at all, and I had to get a pointy object and just shove that pin out and pop the plastic off and put it back in the other direction. But it's not too hard and it works fine now. I did complain about Vortex earlier, but that was just in the accuracy. He does look good. I think it's a good looking helicopter. And look at that there. It is precariously balanced. Look at that. He's just balancing there on the 2 central landing gears. So his center of gravity is exactly his center of gravity. I mean, you can tip it in either direction. He does have landing gear at the front as well, but if you extend them up like that, I find that it causes him to go backwards, so I tend to just let him balance exactly this way. He's got rotating propeller thing at the back, and the main one rotates, but you'll notice there is overlap. So if this was a real helicopter, he would be shredding himself to pieces. I can just pretend I didn't notice that. The part that I was whinging about before, like complaining too much over nothing, is that this whole front section has to detach. So basically, if you don't want a parts form, you can't form a decent helicopter. It just looks like that. Kind of a bit the way that Cyclonus out of Armada needed that Minicon to form the front of his jet, but not quite as bad. I do like this cockpit. If I can just open it up. Now again, that's going to end in disaster, you can see there. But it's a nice clear cockpit. I had seen somewhere that this was going to be painted along the edges to bring out those details in silver. Now that's not actually the case. I think I would have preferred it to be that way. If it had been painted, it might have looked a little bit more like the cartoon. But all in all, a very, very decent helicopter that I do quite like. Now I haven't disconnected any of these swords during the review, but in case you haven't noticed, the swords do pop out. The propeller blades do pop out and they form these swords. I don't care for that. I like my helicopter robots to keep the helicopter blades on the back. I'm happy to have it that way. Finally, that brings me to Onslaught. He's an awesome looking truck. Look how badass that is. He is so tough. He's got mirrors that pop out here. Everything looks like plate steel on him. His detail is excellent. I'm really, really happy with that. He also rolls really good. He's a decent size. I haven't got my Orion out, but if you put him next to Orion, he doesn't look too bad. Next to a Classics Optimus Prime, his size is really good as well. So just scale-wise, he fits in good with a lot of classic stuff. Something on my shelf I do have that I can show him next to is this Bab Cube version of Outback. So it's a bit off. It's definitely not masterpiece scale. I wouldn't call any of these figures masterpiece scale. I think they're all too small to be considered masterpiece. But definitely with a classics collection, this is an ultimate Bruticus. If you had the G1 toy of Onslaught, you'll know that Onslaught actually transformed into his own trailer, which this toy unfortunately doesn't do, but it does come with that trailer, which you can just snap on like this. It's two pegs on either side, like one peg on either side, it just pegs in. I haven't done it super secure there, but you get the idea, it pegs in. Now, on the back, you can place one of the other vehicles. You can place a captured Autobot. You could be transporting a tank. I think maybe that's the most likely thing to be pulling behind this truck, although the scale's a bit off. I've got a feeling a tank would be bigger than that. If you had the G1 toy, you'll also remember that he could plug his big cannons on at the back, and this does that just fine. So on display in vehicle mode, I think all these guys look good, but in particular Onslaught is awesome, as is Swindle and Brawl. Very, very nice. My final thoughts. I think this is awesome. I really like it. I would recommend buying Warbotron's version of Bruticus to anyone. Definitely worth the price. I think that they were well priced at less than $100 each. Now, I know that they've gone on to do other things. I haven't bought into anything else from Warbotron, and I think mainly that's just due to the price. I think the price went up and the desirability of the characters, for me anyway, went down. Bruticus is kind of a key character, but some of the other things they've gone on to aren't so important to me. I wouldn't mind having a big Computron. I definitely would like that, but I don't want to pay more than $100. I don't really want to pay more than $90 each for these, because I don't think that they're worth any more than that. That doesn't affect how good this is, because this was well priced and good quality. So definitely go out and get it if you can. If you can get it as a package, I mean, I even save more. That's probably the way to go now. And in the future, if they do that with Computron, then that's probably what I'm going to do. After having such a big combiner in hand, what I'm really looking forward to now is an even bigger combiner in hand. So kind of what I'm salivating over now is the thought of getting Toy World's massive Devastator. And I can't wait to have Devastator on the shelf next to this. But for now, Warbotron Bruticus is going to have to do. I'm odeean. Thanks for watching.